So I really have just one question for you. How many of Epstein's co-conspirators have you indicted? How many perpetrators are you even investigating?
First, you showed it. I find it.
How many have you indicted?
Excuse me. I'm going to answer the question.
Answer my question.
No, I'm going to answer the question the way I want to answer the question.
No,
Your
you're going to answer
theatrics
the
are
question the
ridiculous.
way I asked it.
Chairman Jordan, I'm not going to get in the gutter with these.
I want to know, were there any underage girls at that party or at any party that Trump attended with Jeffrey Epstein?
This is so ridiculous, and that they are trying to deflect from all the great things Donald Trump has done. You're gonna reclaim
Because this
time when
is
you don't,
bigger than Watergate.
when I don't answer. You don't tell me.
Yeah, I
anything,
did tell you because we saw what you did in the Senate.
Lawyer.
And you have not held a single man accountable. Shame on you. If you had any decency, you would resign right after this hearing.
And I'll direct it to
What
you.
a massive
No, I'm
cover-up.
answering a question.
Chairman, will you restore her time? The witness is interrupted.
Then 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
Red-handed. Don't you ever accuse me of a crime.
I believe you just lied under oath.
Because Donald Trump, the Dow right now is over. The Dow is over $50,000. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about.
They have no fear of us, and that's a problem because they think they're going to get away with everything. And maybe they're right. It all depends on if we reach our breaking point, and I hope that's sooner rather than later. They play by completely different rules than we do. The so-called justice system treats them very differently than it treats us. Jeffrey Epstein had a black book filled with the contact information of very powerful people. Epstein's butler tried to sell that black book, and for that, he was sentenced to 18 months in prison, which is 5 months more than the sentence Epstein received for soliciting a child for prostitution. During the government's cover-up of the biggest scandal in American history, the one time they did try to hold some politicians legally liable, it wasn't for any sort of corruption. It was for telling the military to obey the law. The criminals are in charge right now. They leave nothing in their wake but trauma and ruin in service to a life of craven debauchery and political manipulation. When will we finally say, no, you're not allowed to do this anymore. Here's the consequences. And then we actually carry out those consequences so that future politicians and powerful people finally fear us again and understand that their great wealth and status cannot save them when they do things that would land any one of us regular people in prison for life. It's gotten so bad that I'm risking trouble just for saying these things right now, just for suggesting that corruption should be met with justice. One guy, Jeffrey Epstein, ended up paying the ultimate price. But why? Because justice was finally served? Was that the motive? No. He ended up paying the price to get others off the hook. That's why. Consider the circumstances surrounding Epstein's death and the deaths of many people associated with him, and then consider the massive cover-up that followed, and finally consider the reactions to what we've been learning about the people involved. Let's go through it. Let's go through it to examine the absurdity of it all, the deaths, the cover-ups, and the reactions. Jeffrey Epstein survived for 1 month in the custody of a government that constantly lies to us. On July 23, 2019, 18 days before Jeffrey Epstein's death, there was an incident in Epstein's jail cell. The official report claimed that guards saw marks around Epstein's neck and assumed he tried to kill himself. CBS News, however, obtained a confidential corrections officer memo that tells a very different story. And before you cry fake news, it can now be confirmed in the recent release of the Epstein files. According to that memo, he was found partially conscious in his cell with orange fabric wrapped around his neck. He was taken away on a stretcher, and upon regaining consciousness, Epstein immediately accused his cellmate of attacking him. His cellmate was Nicholas Tartaglione, a former police officer on trial for multiple murders, including a strangulation murder for which he eventually was found guilty. His cellmate denied any involvement, and Epstein later recanted, saying he actually did not remember what happened. There was footage of the incident, but the prosecutors claimed that the footage of that incident was erased by mistake. Epstein's lawyer met with him and claimed that Epstein denied attempting to kill himself and that he lied when he recanted because he did not want to be seen as a snitch in prison. His lawyer also stated that Epstein was excited about his chances with his defense and that it did not seem like he wanted to kill himself. Prison psychology services repeatedly note Epstein's desire to live, his great interest in defending himself in court and going back to his life. Also, despite claiming to not remember the incident with his cellmate, Epstein said that he feared for his safety if he were to return to his cell with him. Given the confidential memo, corroborated by his lawyer's statements and the prison psychologist, it seemed that the government's official report was a lie. Epstein was moved to the special housing unit and placed on suicide watch, which required him to have a cellmate at all times. In the Epstein files, you can find a letter from the associate warden who said that after Epstein met with his lawyer, he was to be placed with a new cellmate named Caesar Sayoc, who you may remember as the crazy Trump supporter that tried to kill 16 prominent Democrats and Trump critics by sending them pipe bombs, none of which detonated. Doesn't seem like a very good person to put with a guy who Trump would want dead. But for some reason that did not happen, and he instead ended up sharing a cell with a man named Efrain Reyes, who befriended Epstein. This new cellmate did not have that much longer to live himself, as you'll soon see. Now, the day before Epstein died, his cellmate was transferred out, and Epstein was left alone against protocol. The 10 p.m. count of prisoners in that wing had one too many prisoners on it, but the DOJ said that count was a mistake. Neither of the cameras pointed at Epstein's cell recorded anything. And that's because, according to the FBI, there was a hard drive failure that occurred on August 10th, the day of Epstein's death. Now, bear in mind that Epstein's body was found at 6:30 in the morning, 2 hours after he died. So if the hard drive failure happened on the 10th, before his death, it had to have happened within at least a few hours of his death in the early morning. Amazing timing for a hard drive failure. Here's a list of the hard drives the FBI seized from the prison that morning. A recording of the common area was provided by the Department of Justice, which they claimed was raw footage, but that was proven false, as it was actually a screen recording that included an edit with 2 different aspect ratios, inconsistent metadata, and speeds, resulting in 10 hours and 52 minutes of footage where there was supposed to be 11 hours of footage. A guard was supposed to look in on Epstein every 30 minutes. That was not done at all. The guards also neglected to do their scheduled rounds at both 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. Those guards were later charged with conspiracy and falsification of records, but those charges were later dropped. Epstein's death was ruled a suicide before an autopsy was even done. Forensic pathologist Dr. Michael Baden, however, concluded that his death was far more consistent with strangulation from behind than hanging, given the specific location of the 3 fractures in his neck. Not just that there were fractures, but the location of them showing that the pressure came from behind rather than above, as would be the case with a hanging. Remember that Epstein was a 6-foot-tall man who was supposedly hanged himself from the top bunk, so when they found him, he was hanging in a kneeling position and had been dead for approximately 2 hours. That would cause post-mortem lividity in his feet, legs, and probably his hands too. See, that's when your blood stops circulating, so it pools in the lowest parts of your body due to gravity. Since Epstein allegedly died upright and was left hanging in a kneeling position, his feet and legs should look very dark, swollen, and filled with all of his blood. It would look sort of like giant bruising. Here's a picture of what his legs looked like after he died. No bruising. Some pooling probably would have occurred in his hands too, from the blood that settled from his arms. But this is what his hands looked like. Also, no bruising. According to an FBI document in the Epstein files, they created a fake body out of boxes and sheets and loaded it into a decoy van to trick the media into following it instead of the van carrying the real body. If you check the Epstein files, you can also find a draft document issued by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York announcing the death of Jeffrey Epstein. That document announcing his death was dated August 9th, the day before Epstein was found dead. It was later altered to reflect the correct date. Even the smartest of killers have been caught by making the simplest of mistakes. And in this case, if Epstein was murdered, I'd say that many suspicious mistakes were made. But how do you catch a killer if the ones doing the killing are also the ones charged with catching the killers? And why would there even be an appropriate investigation if the killer also is in charge of those who would do the investigation? Why would they care about it being believable if they know you're powerless to do anything about it? And why should I believe a government that has been caught lying to us countless times? Is it possible that Epstein killed himself? Sure, it's possible that a perfect storm of coincidences transpired leading up to his death, including conflicting reports, perfectly timed malfunctioning equipment, multiple instances of perfectly timed gross negligence, a misdiagnosis from a renowned forensic pathologist, and willingness of government officials to conspire to mislead the media. Technically, all of that is possible. Jeffrey Epstein was accustomed to a lavish lifestyle and was facing the prospect of life in prison, so it's not outlandish for such a person to be suicidal. But he also had way more leverage than other prisoners. He had a lot of dirt on a lot of powerful people. He still held the cards, as Trump would put it. So why would he fold? There was a path for him if he were willing to play ball, as his partner in crime, Ghislaine Maxwell, discovered. But what if he wasn't as willing to play ball as Maxwell was? Maybe he overestimated his position. Still, there were many others involved besides Epstein who could tell the tale and get these powerful people into trouble. What happened to them? Well, one of the girls he trafficked, Virginia Giuffre, said under penalty of perjury, quote, "I knew if I left, I would be in big trouble. I also knew that I was a witness to a lot of illegal and very bad behavior by Epstein and his friends. If I left Epstein, he knew all kinds of powerful people. He could have me killed or abducted, and I always knew he was capable of that if I did not obey him." The lead detective on the Epstein case, Joe Ricari, reported to the state's attorney's office that several of Epstein's victims were being harassed and threatened by people hired by Epstein, saying that those who help Epstein will be compensated, while those who hurt him will be, quote, dealt with. Now, despite that, no witness tampering charges were filed. Why? Detective Joe Ricari himself died prematurely at the age of 50. the only detail being that it was a sudden illness. Unfortunately, Virginia Giuffre, the victim Epstein recruited from Mar-a-Lago, allegedly killed herself. Now, her father strongly rejected that claim. She made a tweet on December 10th, 2019, that said many evil people wanted to see her quieted and that she was not suicidal. Well, that was 4 years before she actually died, so maybe she changed her mind. Or maybe she did not, and her death was a message to anyone else who was thinking of speaking out. You see, she was far from the only one. Carolyn Andriano, another of Epstein's victims, apparently died of a drug overdose found with fentanyl and prescription drugs. Lee Skye Patrick, another of Epstein's victims, also apparently died from a fatal overdose. Russian model Ruslana Korshinova was on the Lolita Express flight log in Epstein's Island in June of 2006 when she was 18 years old. She fell to her death from her 9th floor balcony of her New York apartment in 2008. None of her family or friends believed that she would kill herself. Now, the man you see here being hugged by the director of the Melania movie is Jean-Luc Bernal, accused of trafficking girls to Epstein, especially Russian girls. Apparently, he hanged himself in prison. Wendy Lee, a journalist investigating Epstein, fell to her death from her London apartment. Those close to her said she had an optimistic view on life and that she would never kill herself. Film producer, investor, and philanthropist Steve Bing had a brief relationship with Epstein. He was also a close friend of Bill Clinton's. Steve Bing's girlfriend, actress Alexanne Mitchum, encouraged him to speak out regarding what he knew about Epstein, according to Carrie Mitchum, her aunt. Shortly thereafter, however, Alexanne died when she took a Xanax pill that was laced with fentanyl. Steve Bing insisted that she was murdered. After talking to the FBI about Epstein, Steve Bing himself fell from his 27th floor apartment to his death. Now, remember that cellmate of Epstein's, Efrain Reyes, who was transferred out the day before Epstein's death? Well, he was also interviewed by the FBI and died 2 weeks later, apparently of COVID. Shortly before his death, however, in an interview with the Daily News about his relationship with Epstein, he said that he was recovering. Mark Middleton was a special assistant to Bill Clinton who facilitated meetings between Clinton and Epstein. Middleton was found 30 miles from his home, hanging from a tree. His death was ruled a suicide. He also had a shotgun wound to the chest. Thomas Bowers, a Deutsche Bank executive who handled finances for both Trump and Epstein, was found hanged in his California home. A video in the Epstein files appears to show the South Africa's ambassador to France on Epstein's plane, with girls who are censored out. That ambassador fell to his death from the 22nd floor of a Paris hotel. There's a lot of other deaths surrounding Epstein throughout the years, including business associates, one of whom was shot to death, and Ghislaine Maxwell's father, who apparently fell overboard from his yacht in the Mediterranean. According to Epstein, in a private email, he was killed by Mossad. Now, I didn't include a lot of other deaths, even if some may have been suspicious because they were people in their 70s and 80s, but you get the picture. A disturbing number of people involved with Epstein, including Epstein himself, were either hanged, overdosed, or fell to their deaths from tall buildings. Do you find any of that even a little bit suspicious? I do. People immediately tried to make the Epstein files a partisan issue, but people who are actually in the files aren't treated in a partisan way. You see, Epstein did not discriminate based on political affiliation. Behind closed doors, these people all mingled together. The wealthy, the politicians, all the people that control our lives. So many of them are just corrupt to the core. Their alleged principles are like an act for the public. Now, we suspected as much, but the files really helped shed some light on that. Now, while people of all political persuasions were mixed up with Epstein, social media and the people involved did not treat it as such. Everyone should be investigated, regardless of political affiliation. Investigate Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, Larry Summers, Stephen Tisch, Richard Branson, etc. Will they be? No. Maybe Bill Clinton will be, but not for any sort of justice as a motive. but for political retaliation. Even so, if he's guilty, he's guilty. I just wish people would be more consistent, because as it stands, it looks like a hell of a lot of these people will be forgotten. As far as other people in the files like Peter Thiel, Steve Bannon, Howard Lutnick, Elon Musk, or Donald Trump, forget about it. They'll get away with anything they did. It won't be investigated because Trump's DOJ is just his personal police force now. 100% politically driven, not impartial in any way. In fact, far from any investigation, they're used to cover up any wrongdoing. Thomas Massey had it exactly right. This is a scandal that makes Watergate look like a day in the park. But the Donald Trump fans say, why focus on Trump? There's nothing in the files that prove he did anything wrong. In fact, Trump is the one who finally released the files. That's the narrative now. Forget about everything leading up to this quasi-release. Forget about the fact that a massive amount of the files remain hidden from both us and Congress. Trump's name is very important, not only for being directly involved with Epstein himself, but also because he fought the hardest to stop the files from being released. Focus on the ones doing the obstruction is always warranted. Yes, both Democrats and Republicans are in the files, but it's especially disconcerting that over a dozen people in Trump's administration are in the Epstein files. These are people running our government. So, yeah, they deserve our focus. Let's not let them get away with this revisionism. That Trump is the most transparent president, and that he was the one to finally release the files. Let's examine what really happened. Now, the first step was to deflect to the Democrats. Why didn't they release the files? In fact, they did. They released the thousands of pages they were allowed to release, but unfortunately the rest of the files were sealed by the courts. Now, I agree that they definitely should have fought harder to release them, but the Democrats weren't exactly free of corruption either. Prominent Democrats were directly tied to Epstein, so they may have had motive to not release them. Now, even though Trump had the files before Biden took office, Democrat leadership is still rightfully criticized for not fighting hard enough to get those files released before Trump took office again. They should have done that. Absolutely correct.
I've listened to my colleagues in this Epstein debate on the Republican side ask over and over, why did the Democrats say nothing during the Biden administration? I've heard TV anchors ask. In fact, I was asked this morning the same question. Now, put aside the fact that in 2019, I called on Andrew Acosta to resign because of his connection to the Epstein files, and I wanted to learn more about why Epstein was not prosecuted. Put aside what Mr. Raskin and Mr. Cummings did. Let's just take you at your word that Democrats said nothing. Is that a reason for you to do nothing? I don't understand the logic here that because you think the Democrats did nothing on the Epstein files in the Biden administration, that to own the libs, you now have license to leave sexual assault victims unprotected. It's just crazy that you hate the Democrats so much that you would let the most notorious child sex trafficker and the people connected to him not be held accountable because you want to own the libs. Let's just take you at your word. Okay, the Democrats did nothing. So you're going to do nothing is what you were telling me. The Democrats, of course, did not do nothing.
Democrat negligence or complicity, however, is not an argument for the outrageous steps Trump took above and beyond anything the Democrats did to stop the release of the files now that he's in office. More important than the release of the files, however, was that there should have been investigations, which neither party did. If you had a problem with the Democrats not doing anything, then why would you be okay with the Trump administration currently not doing anything? Why would you be okay with so many people in the Trump administration being so closely tied to Epstein? Why deflect to the past rather than dealing with the present? MAGA collectively called for the release of the Epstein files all throughout the Biden administration, including several people who would eventually end up in the Trump administration itself, including Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. Curiously, when they finally had access to the files, it's also when their enthusiasm to release the files ended. Kash Patel relentlessly called for the release of the files and said that the director of the FBI would have the Epstein's client list.
Who is currently holding, this is way off the topic, but who has Jeffrey Epstein's
Black Book?
Black Book?
FBI.
But who? That is, I mean, there's...
Oh, that's under direct control of the director of the FBI. And to me, that's a thing I think President Trump should run on. On day one, roll out the Black Book. And not just that. On day one, roll out all of the text message communications we were told were deleted.
So what happened when he became director of the FBI? Well, he immediately started downplaying them. He said there's no credible information that Epstein trafficked minors to other people. Can you imagine saying that after knowing what we know now?
You've seen most of the files. Who, if anyone, did Epstein traffic these young women to besides himself?
Himself. There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday.
Today I saw a worldwide sex trafficking ring with people in other countries sourcing young children for Jeffrey Epstein, co-conspirators' names, men and women. Clearly other people that might be on the client list that are on text messages and emails. Over redaction, dramatic over redaction. It looks like intentionally so. And then documents that are still redacted. And when we asked why these were redacted, that's because they were submitted into this electronic system redacted. And the people that were at our disposal to ask those questions did not know why they were still redacted, Jake.
There is no credible information. None.
Why were the names of these people redacted? Why ignore the testimony of Epstein's many victims? At this point, we know Kash lied. We know Pam Bondi lied under oath. So why do they still have jobs? Why are they not under investigation for obstruction? Probably because they're just following orders. The director of the FBI and the attorney general covering up crimes.
Mr. Patel, before you joined the FBI, you had very strong opinions about what the FBI was hiding regarding Jeffrey Epstein. In a September 2023 interview with Glenn Beck, you said the Black Book is under the, quote, direct control of the director of the FBI. In December 2023, you said, let us know who the pedophiles are. Even for a short time after becoming FBI director, in February of 2025, you tweeted, quote, there will be no cover-ups, no missing documents, no stone left unturned. In June, you told Joe Rogan, quote, we've reviewed all the information, we're gonna give you every single thing we have and can. But then suddenly in July, everything changed. You and Attorney General Pam Bondi released one video and said that there was nothing more to see. Your July memo says you uncovered more than 300 gigabytes of data and physical evidence, but that you had decided no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted. That is a quote. I think what happened, Mr. Patel, is that suddenly you discovered that Donald Trump's name was all over these files, and you started a giant cover-up.
On February 21st, 2025, Attorney General Pam Bondi said the Epstein client list was on her desk.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
Just a week later, they did a bogus photo op with several gullible MAGA influencers being given Epstein files binders, which only included files that had already been released or leaked under the Democrats. They labeled it Phase 1, clearly trying to pretend that they were in the process of releasing the files in full, but nothing more was released. There was no Phase 2. The main and most effective Republican to lead the charge to release the Epstein files was Thomas Massie. Trump called him a moron, has actively endorsed candidates against him, and in June launched a MAGA political action committee against Massie. On July 7th, the Justice Department released a memo stating that no other documents would be made public and that no further investigation was warranted. Pam Bondi said that there was no client list, despite previously stating that it was on her desk. Dan Bongino, to his limited credit, confronted her about the handling of the files. He was immediately demoted and eventually resigned. Now, because of this very unexpected turn of events, there was outrage on both sides of the political aisle. Some prominent Trump supporters started feeling very betrayed. Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of Trump's most enthusiastic supporters, voiced her concerns about this sudden, unexpected shift. We started to see who in MAGA actually stood behind their principles and who stood behind Trump no matter what, even if it meant protecting sex traffickers of underage girls. For instance, several MAGA influencers who had relentlessly campaigned for the release of the files suddenly, curiously changed their tune, as if they got a memo behind the scenes.
The Trump administration is trying to portray a united front as the president continues to face the threat of revolt from his MAGA base over the Jeffrey Epstein files. It comes after telling his supporters to not waste any more time or energy on the deceased convicted sex offender.
Make some noise if you care about the Jeffrey Epstein scandal.
Raise your hand if it matters a lot to you. Raise your hand. So every hand of 7,000 people.
Everybody cares.
A lot. I said a lot. Every hand.
Honestly, I'm done talking about Epstein for the time being. I'm going to trust my friends in the administration. I'm going to trust my friends in the government to do what needs to be done, solve it, balls in their hands. I've said plenty this last weekend.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable.
President Trump's Epstein controversy made headlines Friday. So also did a report from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. That report claims to have new evidence of an Obama administration conspiracy.
That was also precisely when, on July 18th, 2025, Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, accused former President Barack Obama of a treasonous conspiracy against the United States to falsely align Donald Trump in a Russian collusion narrative, citing an allegedly contradictory report from the previous Director of National Intelligence. Now, this accusation of a coup conducted by Obama led to calls for his arrest, with even Trump himself posting a fake AI video of Obama being arrested on July 20th. This transparent diversion tactic worked momentarily as MAGA collectively celebrated the impending arrest of Barack Obama, an arrest that would never happen. That arrest would not come because Gabbard falsely conflated two distinct reports. A September report that concluded Russia did not interfere with election systems, and a separate January report that concluded Russia did use influence campaigns to promote Trump. She used the first report to make it seem like Obama lied when he was actually citing the second report. Her mistake was obvious and either points to complete incompetence or deliberate deliberate deception. Now, given the timing of the renewed Epstein outrage due to the DOJ cover-up and the obviousness of the error, it's clear to me that it was deliberate deception. Either way, as the Director of National Intelligence, it should have been a career-ending blunder. Instead, Trump has her now raiding election offices ahead of the midterms, which is terrifying. Democrats called for legislation to release the Epstein files. So in response, Speaker Mike Johnson shut the chamber down early for August recess so they could not vote. That was also when Todd Blanche, Pam Bondi's deputy, visited Ghislaine Maxwell in prison to interview her. For what reason? Why this particular timing? The Department of Justice released the interview showing that Maxwell praised Trump and claimed that she did not witness him do anything inappropriate. Shortly thereafter, she was moved to a minimum security facility and given unprecedented special privileges, especially for a torturer and trafficker of children. A special exception was made for her to go to a facility that did not allow sexual offenders. Why? If that's not a quid pro quo, then I have no idea what is.
Pretty much everybody else here and throughout the country believes that convicted sex offenders don't deserve special treatment or privileges in prison. And yet Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirator, received perk after perk in prison. In July, she had a 2-day interview with your deputy and President Trump's former defense attorney, Todd Blanche. Just days after that, Maxwell was transferred from a federal correctional institution in Florida to a minimum security camp in Texas, which she, as a sex offender, would normally be ineligible for. At this new facility, as the ranking member talked about, and by the way, it's nicknamed Club Fed, we've heard reports that she's been afforded special privileges, puppy time, private workouts, personal mail, secretarial services.
Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison, and a lot of people want to know if she's going to turn in powerful people. And I know you've talked in the past about Prince Andrew, and you've criticized Bill Clinton's behavior. I'm wondering, do you feel that she's going to turn in powerful men? How do you see that working out?
I don't know. I haven't really been following it too much. I just wish her well, frankly. I've met her numerous times over the years, especially since I lived in Palm Beach, and I guess they lived in Palm Beach. But I wish her well.
This infamous sex trafficker of children, who is now pleading the Fifth to Congress and appears to be playing for a pardon, which Trump did not rule out when asked.
But she should not be in that prison. And she needs to be moved back to a maximum security prison as soon as possible. But what she has told another committee here is that she won't cooperate with them unless she gets clemency from Donald Trump. It's just crazy to consider that she can be wielding this kind of influence within the administration.
Farmer alleges Maxwell threatened to destroy her reputation in the art world, and in one phone call, she believes, threatened her life.
She says, "You're going out to jog on the West Side Highway every day, and I know this. You need to be very careful because there's so many ways to die there. So you have to be really careful. Look over your shoulder."
In response to pressure from the Democrats to release the files, Trump repeatedly called it a Democrat hoax, a curious new accusation that contradicts the argument for why Democrats did not release the files during the Biden administration. In other words, why wouldn't they release their own hoax? Why the sudden reverse? Now it's the Dems calling for the release and the Republicans fighting against releasing them.
It has been 50 days since the people of Arizona's 7th Congressional District elected me to represent them. 50 days that over 800,000 Arizonans have been left without access to the basic services that every constituent deserves. This is an abuse of power. One individual should not be able to unilaterally obstruct the swearing in of a duly elected member of Congress for political reasons.
As if Speaker Mike Johnson hadn't already done enough to stop the release of the files, he also delayed the swearing in of Adelita Grijalva against the will of the American voters to stop her from being the necessary 218th signature on a petition that would force a vote on releasing the Epstein files. On November 12, 2025, the Epstein estate released documents showing that Trump had direct knowledge of Epstein's criminal behavior, yet Trump denied it. That, to me, seems like a difficult thing to deny as one of Epstein's closest friends. As Virginia Giuffre said, quote, "When I was with him, Epstein had sex with underage girls on a daily basis. His interest in this kind of sex was obvious to the people around him. The activities were so obvious and bold that anyone spending any significant time at one of Epstein's residences would have clearly been aware of what was going on." In an article published in New York Magazine on October 28, 2002, Trump said, quote, "I've known Jeff for 15 years. Terrific guy. He's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. No doubt about it, Jeffrey enjoys his social life." So, Trump can deny it all he wants, but he was already on the record 24 years ago, very much not pretending to know nothing of Epstein's lifestyle, years before he was in any sort of trouble. And of all the rich and powerful in pictures with Epstein, Trump has the most. Remember that when Trump and Epstein had a falling out, it wasn't because of Epstein's trafficking, it was because of a real estate deal.
It was a known thing, like among the staff and everyone, that they were best friends. And Epstein bragged about it. And I gave up 30 years to report this. And it's a very serious thing to fight the government.
Maria, when we reached out to the White House for a comment, they responded, and I'll just read for you what they said. Okay. Quote, "The president was never in Epstein's office, and in fact, the president kicked him out of his club for being a creep." They then say that Trump, they're clear there. They say he was never in Epstein's office, which, of course, from the original incident that you're talking about is where this occurred, according to your recollection, at the Helmsley building in New York.
He was absolutely in the offices.
So what do you say when they give a response like this?
Yes. I say that they're being disrespectful to the fact that I have given up my entire life for this case, just to have it investigated. And I'm really sorry for him that he's caught, but, I don't know what to say to that. He's lying. I don't appreciate it. He was absolutely at the offices, and it was 9 o'clock at night. I thought it was inappropriate. But also, they were best friends at the time.
A week after the Epstein estate released damning information about Trump, the House passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act with a nearly unanimous vote. Trump basically had no choice but to sign it, as they clearly had way more than a 2/3 majority to override him if he vetoed it, so it was going to happen whether he signed it or not, but would look much worse if he did not sign it. My question is, though, why did he need a vote to force his hand? Why did there need to be an act in the first place? He campaigned on releasing those files, but when it came time to do it, he fought their release tooth and nail, and in the end, his hand had to be forced by a nearly unanimous vote after a year of shenanigans to prevent their release. And it is under those absurd conditions that he, his administration, and his most sycophantic followers actually give him credit for releasing the files and declaring him the most transparent president. Absurd. Absolutely absurd. That would be like getting caught doing a robbery and then asking for credit when you were forced to give the money back. On November 21st, 2025, one of Trump's most ardent and loyal supporters, Marjorie Taylor Greene, announced her resignation after repeatedly being called a traitor by Donald Trump. Her crime? Well, she was one of the most outspoken Republicans calling for the release of the Epstein files, even after Trump told everyone to stop talking about it. If Trump were innocent, why would that make her a traitor? What did she do that was so wrong? I have yet to get a single answer to that question from any Trump supporter. What did Marjorie Taylor Greene do to Trump that warranted calling her a traitor and causing her to resign?
I was called a traitor by a man that I fought for 6 years for. And I gave him my loyalty for free. I won my first election without his endorsement, beating 8 men in a primary. And I've never owed him anything, but I fought for him for the policies and for America first. And he called me a traitor for standing with these women and refusing to take my name off the discharge petition. Let me tell you what a traitor is. A traitor is an American that serves foreign countries and themselves. A patriot is an American that serves the United States of America and Americans like the women standing behind me.
Trump's Department of Justice was supposed to release all the files by December 19th. They did not. They broke the law. But that doesn't really matter because the law specified no punishment for violating the law. So why wouldn't they break it? The law was toothless.
Right, today marks 1 month since the Justice Department was required by law to release all of the Epstein files. So far, it's released less than 1%. The law, Scott says, that the Justice Department shall release all the Epstein files, not can if it wants to or gets around to it.
Yeah, what's the punishment if they don't?
That's a great point. I mean, that's a problem.
There is none.
Did you hear it? Did you see? The administration is breaking the law, hiding the evidence of probably the most far-reaching child sex trafficking operation in history. And the MAGA position, which is what Scott represents, is so what? What are you going to do if we break the law and run cover for pedophiles and rapists and murderers? Nothing. Play it again.
Yeah, what's the punishment if they don't?
That's a great point. I mean, that's a problem.
There is none.
Did you see the smirk? These people think they're going to get away with it, and they think it's funny. And that's what made my face do this.
They should follow the law, but let's not get our knickers in a twist here. There's no
let's not
punishment
get our
for this.
knickers in a twist over child rape. Why are you talking like that? It's insane.
And let's be clear. 2 days after this heated exchange went viral, the Republicans in the Oversight Committee voted no on a motion to hold Pam Bondi and the DOJ in contempt of Congress for violating the Epstein Files Transparency Act, for not releasing what they are responsible to release, for not telling us why they redacted what they redacted. The Republicans voted to not hold the people responsible for breaking the law responsible. So to Scott's point, what are we going to do about it?
What's the punishment if they don't?
That's a great point. I mean, that's a problem.
There is none.
Well, fuck that. These people are running cover for monsters, for true evil. 2 of the people mentioned in the recent Sasha Riley testimony that was leaked online are on the committee that voted no. I honestly feel like we're in the upside down. Every single one of you that's in Congress that isn't in these files should be walking around with this face and this energy, because I'm just a citizen of this country, but you are a representative. You are the only ones who can do something about it. So do something about it. At the very least, if you are looking to round up child rapists and murderers, then you might want to get the hell out of Minnesota and get back into these files.
They're breaking the law in front of our faces and laughing at us while they do it. That's what they think of us. They think you're nothing more than docile cattle, and you need to prove them wrong. On December 19th, they released only 3,500 documents out of millions. Of those 3,500 documents, they completely redacted 550 pages of them. That's 16% of what they released. Not to mention all the other individual redactions, which included people who had no business being protected. They were supposed to include the reasons for redaction, and they weren't supposed to redact politically exposed individuals or government officials. Naturally, they violated those parts of the law too. Why wouldn't they? There's no penalty for violating the law. It took them more than a month to release the next 3 million files. There's still about 3 million more that are currently unreleased. What was released also came with heavy illegal redactions that protected pedos. Why is the Trump administration redacting the names of pedos?
To my right
is an email that was sent by the victim's lawyers to the DOJ. It was a list of names not to release. What did the DOJ do with this email? They released this email in the document production. Literally the worst thing you could do to the survivors, you did. And they're getting phone calls. A lot of these people didn't want to be known. And we know you touched the document because you redacted one name and you redacted the lawyer's name, but you left the survivor's name there. The next document I want to show you, that was in the title, the victims' survivors' names, all right? The title of this one is Child Sex Trafficking. Co-conspirators, fully redacted. And by the way, I'm gonna unredact them here. Les Wexner is in this. Now your your deputy attorney general said, oh, well, he appears hundreds of times in the files, but he doesn't appear in this file until I forced you to release it, where he's listed as a co-conspirator, not to tax evasion, but to child sex trafficking, not to prostitution, not to money laundering, child sex trafficking. And then finally, what we have here is the third exhibit that I have is emblematic of the FD 302 release. These are the documents that we need that you're holding on to and over redacting because they have the names of the men who are implicated. How do we know? Because the survivors gave testimony to the FBI, and it's in there. And what happens when you go to the portal at the DOJ to look at what's behind this redaction? Another redaction. So we can't even see them. And then there's some of these files you've pulled down from the website that we will never see.
After those were released, Trump immediately called for investigations into prominent Democrats in the files, like Bill Clinton and Larry Summers. That's a very curious thing to ask for, seeing as how Trump's DOJ already said that no further investigation was warranted. And why did Trump only want Democrats to be investigated? Democrats, mind you, who must have been included in their own so-called hoax. No investigations into Peter Thiel, Steve Bannon, Howard Lutnick, Elon Musk, or Donald Trump himself, who appears in the files at least 38,000 times. And I say at least because look how much was redacted. Who knows how many times he was really mentioned? What are they hiding? Update. As I was making this video, we found out that I was indeed correct, and there are now over 1 million mentions of Trump in the files. Unredacted files were required to be handed over to Congress, but the Trump administration made it very difficult on them. These files were supposed to be unredacted, but in many cases they found that by taking off the redactions, it only revealed more redactions, a clear cover-up by the FBI. What was unredacted led from 38,000 mentions of Donald Trump to over 1 million. I had to interrupt editing my own video because this stuff is moving so fast, and it shows that of course they redacted the shit out of Donald Trump. Why? Why was he redacted that many times? And remember, there's still millions of more pages that haven't even been released yet. Why? Now that you know the truth, let's revisit what Kash Patel previously said about how many times Trump's name appears.
You said you don't know the number of times Trump's name appears in the files, so it could at least be 1,000 times. Is that right?
The number is a total misleading factor. We have not released
anyone's
name in the Epstein files that has not been credible.
Director, could it at least be 1,000 times?
We have released every piece of legally permissible information.
Okay,
you can characterize the numbers however you want it.
Reclaiming my time, Director. It sounds like if you don't know the number, it could at least be 1,000 times. Which
It's not.
leads me-
It's not.
Is it at least 500 times?
No.
Is it at least 100 times?
No.
Then what's the number?
I don't know the number, but it's not that.
Less than 1,000 turned out to be more than 1 million. On the 4 computers made available to Congress to search more unredacted files, as you can see from this paper Pam Bondi was holding, they kept track of the legislators' search history. Isn't that interesting? They're monitoring searches into the Epstein files. Are they doing that with all of us? What do they plan to do with that information? And yes, they did release some accusations of Trump participating in rape, torture, and murder, but dismissed those as dead ends, uncredible. If there are credible accounts that are redacted, are you confident that Trump's DOJ would do anything about it? I'm not. All they do is lie and retaliate. Law and order, and especially accountability, are the last things on their minds. Now all Trump wants to do is move on. This is clearly a very sore spot for him.
And I would say that, these files were made up by Comey, they were made up by Obama, they were made up by the Biden,
Women who are survivors of Epstein's are unhappy with those redactions that came out. Some of them, entire witness interviews are totally blacked out. Do you think that they should be more transparent?
The fact that they thought they released too much. I heard that. And you tell me something else. No, I think it's really time for the country to get onto something else. Really, now that nothing came out about me, other than it was a conspiracy against me, literally by Epstein and other people. But I think it's time now for the country to maybe get onto something else.
What would you say to people who feel like they haven't gotten justice, Mr. President?
Something that people care about. What did you say? Go ahead.
What would you say to the survivors who feel like they've gotten
You are the worst reporter. No wonder CNN has no ratings because of people like you. She's a young woman. I don't think I've ever seen you smile. I've known you for 10 years. I don't think I've ever seen a smile on your face. You know why? You know why you're not smiling? Because you're not telling the truth. And you're a very dishonest organization, and they should be ashamed of you.
But Trump isn't the only one who wants those files to disappear. Elon Musk had an epic multi-day crash out on Twitter when the latest batch of the Epstein files were released. Look at all these tweets related to the Epstein files at all hours of the day, clearly overcompensating, clearly constantly on his mind. These tweets are still happening right now. I finally had to just quit taking screenshots because he keeps producing more and more of these pathetic tweets. This is like what happens when a cheating spouse is caught. Musk had been adamant that Epstein hounded him with invitations to the island, but that Musk rejected him outright. When talk of Epstein being given a tour of SpaceX circulated, Elon said he had no idea where that came from and that it never happened to the best of his knowledge. Well, upon release of the emails, we see a very different story. We see that, in fact, it was Elon who pursued a relationship with Epstein after Epstein had been charged with sex crimes on one occasion and after he had pled guilty on another. We see Elon asking this already notorious sex offender when the wildest party on his island will be. Then only a month later, on Christmas of 2012, rather than spending time with his family, he's sending emails to Epstein to make plans to party. Elon later claimed that because he involved his wife with those plans, it proves that he wasn't planning to cheat on her. Never mind that his open acknowledgement of those emails also proves that he lied about rejecting these so-called invitations and that it was actually he who pursued Epstein. Epstein himself even warned Elon about the ratio of women to men on the island and that it might be a problem for his wife, but Elon replied that it would not be a problem for her. This sounds like swinging to me, like cheating wasn't a consideration. It didn't end there. There were several more emails in which they both made plans to meet on the island, with Epstein saying he'll send his helicopter to come get him. Now, we don't really know if Elon went to the island, but that doesn't really matter because Epstein didn't limit his crimes to the island by far. He wasn't even convicted for crimes on the island. What we do see, though, is Elon doing the precise opposite of rejecting Epstein. Here he replies, yes, to an invitation to the Caribbean, possibly the island, with both Epstein and Woody Allen, by then both known for their sex crimes. Why would you accept such an invitation? Did it end there? Of course not. Once again, on the next Christmas of 2013, Elon is begging to go to the island. And once again, Epstein says he'll send the helicopter to come get him. At one point, we see that it's not Musk rejecting Epstein, but Epstein rejecting Musk because of a scheduling conflict. We see in Epstein's emails him stating that he and the girls are going to see Musk at SpaceX tomorrow. There's other emails regarding the scheduling for the meetup, and there's an email from Epstein to Musk thanking Musk for the tour at SpaceX and saying that he missed out on Christmas. But he did acknowledge Epstein's thanks for the tour with an IC and a smiley face. So his public tweet about not being sure where this rumor about Epstein visiting SpaceX came from is bullshit, because in private emails, he himself acknowledges it. Elon is a very different person in public than he is in private. In this email, Epstein says Elon Musk is coming to lunch at the house. Did he? Well, who knows? But in 2015, Epstein emailed a picture he took of both Elon and Mark Zuckerberg dining with him long after both of them should have known not to be associating with this guy, a guy who had already been in prison for solicitation of a child for prostitution. Take a look at this clip of Joe Rogan.
So he gets arrested, and he gets like a little slap on the wrist, and then he's back in action with all these rich people again.
Yep.
Like really rich, influential people. Like Bill Gates is hanging out with him after he's already been arrested and convicted. Like that's bananas.
But Rogan thinks it's bananas that rich and powerful people would hang out with Epstein after Epstein had already been arrested and convicted. Crazy. Now watch this clip of Joe Rogan, knowing what you know now.
Who was the president for 4 years.
Right. That lawsuit was funded by Reid Hoffman, who is a major Dem donor. And also an Epstein client. The plot thickens.
The plot thickens. Jesus Christ.
Yes.
It's just... It's so blatant. It's like so obvious. The SpaceX lawsuit, the Trump stuff, it's so obvious.
Yes. Like known Epstein clients who are obviously extremely powerful, they're powerful politically and very wealthy, are Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, and Reid Hoffman. And some others too, but those three. So why was Reid Hoffman so intent on destroying Trump?
You think it's because they're worried about the list coming out?
Yeah, one of the reasons.
Joe Rogan, totally oblivious, is sitting across from the richest guy on earth, while that guy berates other people associated with Epstein, while he himself knew damn well that he courted Epstein and met with Epstein after his arrest and conviction. Just a slimy, shameless liar. And now that he's caught, he's doing everything he can to deflect to everyone else. And because he's the richest man in the world, there will be legions of people who will defend him no matter what. People who will shamelessly kiss his ass and try to be seen as fighting for him, most likely with the pathetic hope that maybe they'll get some crumbs off his plate. Put this in perspective. Let's say you suspect your wife of cheating on you with a known marriage wrecker named John Doe. So you confront her about it, and she goes on and on and on for days about how she did nothing wrong, and that indeed John Doe did invite her to meet up, but that she rejected him every time, and how dare you accuse her? But then later, you check her text messages and find out that it was she who kept trying to meet up with John Doe, and that they did in fact meet up on at least a couple of occasions. You wouldn't be able to say for sure that they slept together, but what would you think about your wife in that situation? Would you give her the benefit of the doubt, like the Elon fans are are doing for Elon after he clearly lied to them? Now, did you notice how differently Elon Musk and Marjorie Taylor Greene were treated? When Musk had a big falling out with Trump, Musk even accused Trump of being in the Epstein files, and that was the real reason he didn't want them released. Did Marjorie Taylor Greene do anything even remotely that hostile? No. All she did was effectively campaign for the release of the files. Musk was welcomed back into the fold, while Marjorie Taylor Greene was excommunicated as a traitor. Why the difference? Well, two reasons. One, Greene effectively campaigned to release the files, while Musk just virtue signaled in tweets. And two, because Musk has broad-reaching power and influence, while Greene does not. Musk can provide substantial resources, and Greene cannot. Think about what that means. Why did so many billionaires get involved with Jeffrey Epstein, several of them being those who ended up as the richest people on Earth? Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, and powerful men like Donald Trump and Bill Clinton. That's not a coincidence. There's something about that level of power that does something to you. Now, surely it wouldn't happen to all of us, but perhaps a great many of us. I don't think a lot of us realize how damaged these people are, but I want you to give it some thought. Think about what it's like to play a video game with cheat codes. You have unlimited health, unlimited ammo, unlimited lives, unlimited magic, or whatever. The challenges of the game become non-existent. At first it's fun, because you're used to the game being challenging, but suddenly it isn't anymore. That fun is very short-lived, because you've removed aspects of the game that were deliberately designed to engage you. Now imagine playing the game all day, every day, with those cheat codes turned on. What would happen is that you would become numb to it, desensitized, and you would seek out other ways to entertain yourself. You'd do anything to feel some sort of thrill, excitement, or meaning again. Well, we human beings were shaped by nature. The analogy works even if you believe we were designed by God. Either way, we human beings have specifications, certain needs. And what happens to a person when you give them cheat codes for life? What happens when a person has so much money that they can buy whatever they want, no matter how outlandish, and it won't affect their finances, while everyone else in their society struggles to make ends meet? What happens when you make someone that different from everyone else? They're playing the game of life by totally different rules than the rest of us. What happens to someone when you make them that special? What happens to someone when you give them so much power over other people's lives? What does that do to their egos, their sense of entitlement, and how they feel about their fellow human beings? How does that affect the way others treat them? I think it makes them numb and desperate to feel anything that's real. It causes them to seek that which they are not allowed to have, that which is taboo to have, that which should never be for sale. Through their own ambition and lack of morality, they landed themselves in their own personal hell, and they don't even know it. Because society told them that success and happiness means flying in your private jet to your private island and to indulge in a lifestyle of extreme decadence. Now, to many of us, that might seem like paradise, but consider for a moment that it's actually a prison. Because they could never have what even the poorest of us have. They don't know who their real friends are. They don't know if anyone truly loves them. And they could never know that unless they gave up their great wealth and power. But that's too terrifying for them. They no longer know how to live without the cheat codes, or they're too scared to. Have you ever thought of how terrifying it would be to never know if you are liked or loved? Those people are truly alone. It doesn't matter how many people fawn all over them. It doesn't matter how much they are praised, followed, and worshipped, because that can all be fake. And there's no way to tell otherwise. Are they there for you or for what you have? Do the seagulls circle you just because you brought a loaf of bread to the beach? What happens when the bread runs out? Where do the seagulls go? Do they stick around because they love you so much? No. Imagine living your entire life with everyone around you being like a seagull, hoping that you'll toss them a piece of bread. That's the life they created for themselves. I would pity them if they weren't monsters. So, if you're ever feeling envious of the billionaire class, I want you to remember something. You have something billionaires don't. It's something they could never buy, and it's something that makes life worth living. It's true friendship, true love, and the ability to know when you really have them. That is what is available to you that's not available to them. And that's more valuable than all the private jets and all the private islands on Earth. So sleep well.